What's up, everybody? I am Jesse, or GameOverJesse, as you all may know me, and here with me is Misclick and Spawnwave to discuss our favorite and worst moments in Zelda. These are events or things that happened in the Zelda games that we loved more than any other moments, or things that happened that made us absolutely hate what was going on. So, for me, I'll go ahead and start this off to give sort of an idea. My favorite thing in all of Zelda that I think is just the best moment, the best thing that's ever happened, is an Ocarina of Time. If you're playing through the game blind, so you don't know the story, you don't know what's going on or anything like that, you haven't been spoiled, you beat the first 3 dungeons, you go, the whole game's been building up to you getting these 3 spiritual stones, getting the Ocarina of Time, getting the Master Sword so you can defeat Ganon. The game prior to this followed the same pattern, A Link to the Past. You get the 3, the 3 pendants, I believe, and then you can pull the Master Sword. And then the game kind of changes, but Ocarina of Time takes it to the next level. The entire game, the entire overworld essentially changes. So, and you're not a child anymore, you're also an adult. So, you're introduced to new characters. As soon as you leave the Temple of Time, you notice, oh hey, I'm an adult. But that's the only thing you notice. But then as soon as you walk out, you go into Hyrule Castle Town, everything's burnt down, destroyed, all of the citizens are now zombified, re-deads, or whatever you want to call them. You go into Hyrule Field. When you're close to Hyrule Castle, there's like a dark looming presence in the air. You go to Zora's Domain, it's now completely frozen. You go to Goron City, there are no Gorons except a little kid. You go to Lake Hylia, it's completely dried up. You go to Kakariko Village, it has like all the characters moved away, like ran away to Kakariko Village to get away from trouble. There are like just tons of stuff going on that like the world is in complete chaos pretty much. You go to Kakariko or Kokiri Forest, not Kakariko, and now there are enemies everywhere. All of the Kokiri are hiding, scared. They're in their house or in different areas, and it's been overtaken. There's Deku Scrubs, Deku Babas, all of this stuff. So the world basically completely changed. Evil Luigi taking over the ranch. So I think that is one of the best moments in Zelda history, just because the entire game, everything that you've known, has changed.
Yep.
The lake's dried up, the mountain is now on fire, Zora's Domain, all the fish are frozen, so that's mine. Going to you, Miss Click, what is your favorite Zelda moment?
Favorite? It's rough, dude. I think for me, probably one of the best moments, and I don't even know if it's considered a best moment, probably just like the best memory when I think about, like, back on it is, well, first, just like the small, like, I have 2, because it's really hard. The first one is the appreciation. I always had a love for the evening time, like the sunset time. And I didn't know exactly how to like put my finger on to why I loved it. And then after I played Twilight Princess, and in the beginning of the game, there's a famous quote: "Tell me, do you feel a strange sadness?" As dusk falls. And like from that moment, like I was in like 6th grade, like that first quote, I was like, yes, I do. Like I actually do. And that was like one of the coolest moments, because I was like, as a kid, I loved it. I've always been a night owl, but I didn't understand why I understood, like why I loved dusk. So when Russell said that, I was like, yes, I do. I do feel it. And then the other one definitely was probably Skyward Sword, where you're done with everything, and then Zelda turns to Link, and she's like, what about you, Link? What will you do now? And you're like, this is the beginning of Hyrule. It's so cool. So those are like 2 of my favorite moments, because like I cried so much. Like the storyline.
It's really cool that you mentioned that Russell quote, because there was a question for the Zelda mailbag on the last podcast with Daniel and Holly Wolf, and one of the questions was, what is your favorite quote from the Zelda series? And that is one of the quotes that I mentioned, that
Nice.
That speech that Russell gives.
It hit me. It hit me hard, dude. And then probably my worst Zelda moment was probably...
We saved that.
Oh, we're not doing that yet? Okay, good. Okay,
we're doing best first, and then we go around again to do the worst.
Okay.
All right, Spawnwave. John.
Probably my best. You actually kind of took the one I like. I like the Link to the Past.
Do you want us to... I don't mean to interrupt you, but do you prefer to be called by the username or your real name, like John Spawnwave?
You just call me John. You can call me John. It's fine.
Okay.
Yeah. You kind of took mine because I liked Link to the Past where it opened up after the 3 pendants. And that was a big deal back then because, I mean, think about the games I was playing on the Super Nintendo at the time that were very small. And then that one, I thought it was over, it blows up, and it's massive. You know, you still have another 8 dungeons even after that. But I guess if I really had to think about it outside of that, my favorite Zelda moment is when I realized just how dark and contrasting in this case, Majora's Mask was going to be when I got that game. Because before, they didn't really deal with things like death and emotional death at the time. Right. But then you go into Majora's Mask and you realize you were actually taking the form of characters that had died and had an effect on other people in the world at the time. Like when you played in the band and people thought you were actually the person who had died, you know, and it was like, man, because you found him in the water and he dies and he turns into a mask and everything. Right in front of you, yeah. And at that point I was like, man, we have the butler's son and everything. I'm like, man, this is a like very, like, this is a serious risk they're taking in this game. And I just thought it was way better, I think, with that kind of emotion kind of built into the game. It was a big deal, I think, at the time.
Yeah. So, what you mentioned there about, like, they believing you were the person that had previously died, Daniel, again, a reference to last week's podcast, he was talking about how it's so funny in the game whenever you are wearing Darunia's, no, Darbani. Darbani's mask. So you're wearing the Goron mask. And a lot of the people there know that he died. So when you're walking around talking to people, there's a few NPCs that's like, hey, aren't you supposed to be dead? Whatever. Why don't you go in and help us do this? So it's like they know you're dead and you show up and they're like, hey, you're supposed to be dead. Never mind.
Well, a few of them are like you almost resemble, if I'm not mistaken. A few of them are like you resemble him.
Think about what was happening at the time, though, where the moon was crashing down into the Earth. They probably don't even want to think about death at the time. They're probably just trying to be as positive as possible before they all eventually die. So
yeah.
All right. I guess that brings us to our worst Zelda moments. This time, I still need to think about it. So going back to you, Miss Click, sorry. Skipping my turn, going to you because I still have to think about the one that I hate the most. So for everybody watching, this isn't something that, like...
Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, like, this isn't something that caused us to completely hate the game or stop playing it. It's just something that happened during a cutscene or an event in the game that's like, oh, this... Like, the game would have been a lot better if this wasn't included, where like this didn't happen, or easy. Something that made you like put the controller down for like a week or two. But just because it's the worst thing in the game for you, it isn't necessarily something that makes you hate the game overall, because a good game could still have bad stuff that you don't necessarily agree with. So if you need more time to think about it, Miss Click, we can go.
Yeah, now my answer's changed. This isn't user error now.
All right. So Spawnwave, John.
Probably the worst Zelda moment is when I walked into Walmart. I bought
this is an IRL.
Kind of. And then I go home and I pop the game in and I realize they want me to play all the way through Skyward Sword with motion controls. Okay. At that point,
man,
Nope. It wasn't doing it for. I did it on the Wii. And then I got it on the GameCube. Much better experience for Twilight Princess on the GameCube. I don't care what anyone says, much better. And it was so hard to get over. I couldn't believe it.
So you're saying you're talking about Twilight Princess?
No, I'm talking about Skyward Sword.
Skyward Sword. Oh, okay.
Yes.
But you have to admit, like, the Skyward Sword controls are completely different than Twilight Princess controls.
No, they're better, but
still frustrating.
Twilight Princess, like, you had to waggle the controller.
I just wanted to sit down and play Zelda, and they want me to like dance around. No, I'm not doing all that.
Dude, I was good. I was up, and I was Skyward Strike.
Yeah, but the nerve to not give me an option was annoying. I'll say that.
Yeah.
But that's why I would like to see them remake the game and actually add controls to it.
Yeah, this is something very similar to that because a lot of people had complaints about the all touch controls from the DS Zelda games. And I believe I want to say it was Phantom Hourglass, the dungeon that you have to keep returning to, there's a sign hidden in it. And when you read the sign, it kind of breaks the fourth wall a bit and pokes fun at itself because it says, maybe it was a joke just added in by the localization team or something, but it says something like making fun of the fact that like it says something along the lines of, because I can't remember the exact quote, but it says something like, whose idea was it to not include traditional controls? So like it was basically making fun of itself to like, hey, this...
Yeah, I didn't mind the touch controls in those ones as much. It actually kind of felt more like almost a mouse like that I was using on the computer.
Yeah.
So I didn't mind that one as much, but I mean, for a big console launch like that, with Skyward Sword, I was a little annoyed.
Yeah.
Yes.
I played it for the first time on the original 3DS. I didn't get a chance to play it on the actual DS, so it was like the smaller 3DS that I played it on, and I lost my pin, the stylus that comes with it. So I used an actual pin, not thinking, like the round part of the back of it, and it scratched up the screen. Yeah. So that ruined my experience with it, but that's not my worst. That's just a similar thing that I had with Spawn Waves. But Miss Click, do you have your worst Zelda memory?
I honestly, to me, Zelda's always been where it's like a work of art. So I necessarily don't criticize or get negative. Nothing's really ever made me like put something down.
Yeah.
Temple of the Ocean King, I did get upset with necessarily for having to go back a billion and one times.
Yes.
I really can't think of anything. The only thing that I ever like actually got really pissed off with was we were streaming Breath of the Wild, and durability, it was kind of frustrating knowing the Master Sword still kind of broke and was unusable for a while, but it was the first time I'd ever broke it because we were facing Silver Lionel. First time we broke it, and I didn't realize it broke right away. So I was like, crap. And at that point, it was like, does it come back? Like, I don't know. I don't want to save the game if it doesn't come back. I would, so I was freaking out, and everybody's telling me, I think it comes back. I'm not sure. I haven't even got to that part of the game myself. And I just remember I was like, okay, well, I'm not going to save. Went through the entire rest of the Coliseum. By then, my Master Sword had come back because it had taken another hour to get through all the other enemies in the Coliseum. And as I killed the last enemy, he struck me, and I died. So we killed each other at the exact same time. And I restarted to the very beginning of the Coliseum because I did not save. And that was probably the only thing that like I actually got upset with the Zelda game before, because I'd never like had that problem necessarily, but because I was like pissed off that the Master Sword broke, that like led me. And like it's like one of the favorite moments that the stream talks about, like, hey, remember to save because you remember that one time. And I'm like, shut up, I'm gonna kill you. But yeah, that's like the only time probably that I've literally been like, I need a second, just let me go screech in the back room real quick.
All right. And do you guys have any like in-game story things that happened that wasn't just gameplay related, or like things that happen in the story of the games that
you didn't like?
Yeah. I guess that's another side of the question.
I just think it really bit, like in Skyward Sword where Girahim just disappeared so fast. I was like, dang, dude, like you literally dealt with him the entire game. He was the most annoying little pest, just completely just giving you a really hard time. And then for him just to like go just like that in the way that he did. I don't want to spoil it because some people said they haven't played it. But that was just like, are you serious? Like, first off, it made Demise seem much more terrifying, but I was just like, are you freaking serious? You just shut him up like that? Okay, whatever.
All right. You can't think of anything, John?
No, I can't. I don't have it off the top of my head.
All right. So there's two that come to my mind. One is the thought that I'm sure a lot of people that watch my channel are familiar with Zelda Ura, or the planned expansion that was canceled for Ocarina of Time. The thought that there could have been like more dungeons or items and stuff like that that could have added on to the game, but I'll never be able to experience it, kind of drives me crazy. So not a big fan of that. But I would say that there was a lot of, and this goes for Breath of the Wild as well, but there was a lot of unutilized or like unused potential, to where Skyward Sword gives you 3 boss fights with the Imprisoned, who becomes Demise, and it also gives you 3 boss fights with Girahim. So that's 6 boss fights with 2 different characters, and each of those fights, like, there's only slight variations with them. So like they don't feel different enough from each other until like the very last one against the Imprisoned, because then he's actually...
That's terrifying. It flies.
Yeah,
like a flying cockroach.
He's actually flying in it. But there was there was a very specific part in one of the original trailers for Skyward Sword. I think it was the very first one they showed off at the Game Awards was actually on Spike TV before it like moved over to YouTube. But there's a part in the trailer where in the lava you see like a snake-like creature, like a tail like going up and coming out of the lava and then going back in. Sort of like you seeing like the tail of a snake like coming out of like the lake or something, going back in or a river. And my mind immediately went to, oh, this is Volvagia or like Volvagaya from the fire dragon from Ocarina of Time, because Skyward Sword was promoted as the prequel to everything. And in Ocarina of Time, you learn about hundreds of years ago, or like a really long time ago, there was this dragon that terrorized everyone, and one of the hero Gorons like rose up and defeated it, and then Ganondorf brings it back to life in Ocarina of Time. So I was like, oh, we're going to witness that dragon, or like maybe we're going to be one of the people to help kill that dragon. So you get to that dungeon, and it turns out there is a dragon there, but it's Eldin. Like,
yes,
I think that's his name, the fire dragon who like teaches you part of the song or the ballad of the goddess.
Songs.
Yeah, so there is the fire dragon there, and there are people that theorize that they are related or whatever. But the issue comes with this boss fight that I had built up in my head ended up just being another Girahim fight. So that was like a really bad moment for me, because it was like there was so much potential to go into detail or give more explanation on all of this stuff that was left unexplained or whatever, because it explains how the Master Sword was created. It gives you a backstory on the Hylian shield. It does all of this stuff, but there was so much left that it could have done that it just
I think if you did that though, it would end up being like a Spider-Man movie where you have too many things going on at once.
Yeah.
In my opinion. Like, to be honest, like we were talking about a couple podcasts ago, we were talking about like where would you like to see another game put in between, a couple, like have one after Skyward Sword before Ocarina of Time, and you see, the establishment of all these, horrible bosses and stuff. I think that'd be super cool. It's unfortunate, because that's like a cool concept. I've never heard of someone, who really would put those two and two together like that. So I can understand, like, if an expectation that gets failed. That's why I don't have expectations.
Yeah.
But
and then
no, that's cool.
My other worst thing was just, as amazing as Breath of the Wild was, like every website gave it a 9 or a 10. Probably close to one of the best games that we'll see from Zelda or Nintendo, depending on how you view the game. But as great as it wasn't perfect. And to me, what would have made it perfect was if there were, like, take away half of the shrines that we got and give us like 4 or 5 traditional themed dungeons. Like, there seemed to be such a lack of variety in it. Like, instead of giving us like the Iron Knuckle or a lot of these other enemies, it's like, here's a fire Lizalfos, or here's a water Lizalfos, here's an electric Lizalfos, here's a electric Bokoblin or whatever. What in the world?
Yeah. How would they have established, though, if you were going to do something like that, how would they have established that, Hyrule was this prospering land and technology was so great, and, they had, all these, this composed civilization, and then you have only a series of 100 years. How would they establish, all these temples or all these, like locations that wouldn't have been controlled? Like, how would you have been able to explain that they didn't have a grips of like, having a government over them technically.
Yeah.
Like, what would be the reason as to, oh, there's these temples that weren't manned, like, all of a sudden this happened? How did, where did these Iron Knuckles, exist, during the time of Hyrule being of peace? I think that would be pretty tough to explain if people were going to dig into that, as far as like, where did they come from if they weren't there before, everything, the machines betrayed them. But yeah, it's interesting that people want, traditional temples now, because people at first were like, so boring, like, I'm tired of it. I want something new. It's like, now you have something new. It's like people want to mix, so it's kind of like, it's going to be interesting to see what the next
please
game.
Everybody. So.
Exactly. Where it comes in between. Maybe they'll make a hybrid of it.
Yeah, but for me, it was just the lack of variety for some of the enemies and bosses and temples and stuff in Breath of the Wild. And then everyone looked for the DLC for Breath of the Wild to be a way for Nintendo to fix that. Like, oh, well, we didn't get traditional dungeons because maybe they're working on a big traditional dungeon for the DLC. And then it's just another Divine Beast or whatever, which the DLC was good, but it didn't live up to the expectations. I guess they changed a bit too much in the Breath of the Wild for me. But I guess that brings us to the very end of this. So I want to say thank you, Spawnwave, and thank you, Miss Click. If you can still stay for a short time, we'll do a Q&A, Miss Click. And
sure.
Spawnwave, you're free to stay if you would like, but if you have to go, as you mentioned, then...
I have to do filming.
All right. So for everybody watching, since you won't be here for the very end of the podcast, if people enjoyed seeing you on the Hylian Gamescast, where can they find more from you?
You could find me at Spawnwave on YouTube every weekday morning, 8 a.m. Eastern Time, or occasionally other times too, but usually 8 a.m. Eastern Time, weekdays. And then, of course, we take stuff apart and everything as well. So come on by and see us.
Awesome. All right. Thank you for coming on. And
absolutely.
Yeah, everyone, go check out Spawnwave.
Do it.
Yes. All right. See ya.
All right. Thanks, guys. See ya.
Bye.